I'ma see each and every one of you out there this evening. Now, I had to come up here live before I did the opening clip. We will be playing the opening clip from the Cross and the Crescent because we do have Brother Eric with us. So it is an ode to the Cross and the Crescent. But you will see coming soon, January 8th. I didn't have time to take that out tonight. I got off work at 8 o'clock. It's 9. I didn't have quite enough time to be able to do that. But I still want to play this just because we do have dear brother Eric with us. So here we are. Get ready. Amen. Amen. He is risen indeed. Risen indeed. Again, God bless each and every one of you out there this evening. What a wonderful, amazing opening uh, video that we have this evening. All credits go to our dear sister Connie. And if you want to see more of that, you need to head on over to the Cross and the Crescent. We will get Eric up here in just a minute, and he will give us the days and times that he goes live over there on his channel. But before we do that, I always do have to go through the prayers and the thank yous and everything else to that nature first. So, getting into the prayers. I pray to you, Father, and by the name of your Son and by the power of your Spirit, that you grant me and Eric the ability to speak clearly and boldly, to take captive any arguments against your holy scriptures. I also pray for the safety of the Christians being persecuted in Muslim lands, specifically people like Sister Hatun Tash and our other brothers and sisters who are over at Speaker's Corner on the front lines. I pray you take care and solve conflicts around the world. I also pray for our brothers and sisters fighting through health problems or mental health issues. I pray you reach down and heal them, Father. Dear God, you know us better than we know ourselves, and please give us the strength to keep striving for you. I'd also like to lift up some of your strong soldiers here that me keep blessing them and their families. Sister Hatun Tash, and Daughter of Christ, and Brother Jay from the DCCI Ministries. Brother Adam Seeker, the biblicist, Debit Ray. Brother Prophet Google, Sheikh Umad, Gopal's Ministry to the Hindus. Brother Christian Prince, Rob Christian, Al Fadi, David Wood, Jay Smith, Sam Shimon, AK Sniper, Dr. Tony Costa, Steve Hussein, Reverend Anthony Rogers, Brother Ask Truth Apologetics, Islam Critiqued, Lloyd DeJong, Somali Christian TV, of course, my dear brother Eric that's with us at the Cross and the Crescent, Sister Kay out of London, and sorry, and also Thaddeus from Reasoned Answers, and any other apologist or polemist that I haven't mentioned this evening. I also ask God that you watch over the women given birth this year and may their children love you. I also ask that you bring Muslims, Hebrew Israelites, and any other heretic back home to you. Lastly, I ask that through this stream today, just one comes to know the knowledge of the true triune God. I ask this in the name of your glorious Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen and amen. Thank you, each and every one of you, for showing up. But first and foremost, I want to thank my Lord and Savior. Without my Lord and Savior providing the ability, I wouldn't be able to have an online ministry. So all thanks goes to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Next, I want to thank my wife and my children. I have a very supportive family for this ministry, and anybody that's in the YouTube atmosphere knows how much time and effort that you have to put into this, and how much your family has to help within this for it to work. So I do thank them. And last but not least, I want to thank each and every one of you out there, because I say it each week and I'm going to say it again. It would be boring sitting here by myself, just talking by myself. So thank you for showing up each week. And of course, the only thanks that I would ever ask for is just go ahead and hit that like button, click that subscribe button, hit that bell, turn on all notifications so you know that when we're coming live. And also, after the video is done, throw some comments into the video just to get it into the algorithm. Let's get it over on these Muslim channels. Let's see if we can get some answers to some of these questions, right? And of course, if the Lord does place it upon your heart to help the ministry financially, you can do that through the Patreon and PayPal, or you can do these super stickers and super chat here in YouTube as well. So, the question that we are asking today: is there evidence for Mecca? But to do that, I've got my dear brother Eric. How you doing, brother Eric?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for having me tonight, brother. I really appreciate you bringing me on.
Now, before we get into a little discussion, before we start off the live stream, how about you let everybody know about the Cross and the Crescent, what you guys do over there, what day and what time that people can catch you?
Absolutely. We are a YouTube stream show that is on the Cross and Crescent discussion group 9234. I don't know why they added 9234 to it. Maybe there was 9233 was taken. I don't know, but that's in order to find us on YouTube. You type that in. And we're there every Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we talk about all kinds of different topics dealing with Islam and Christianity. It is a show dedicated to rightly dividing the truth between Christianity and Islam, is what I say every Sunday. And it is. And what we do is we normally have some type of slideshow, some type of presentation. Then we have a discussion about it, and it's just a good time. I hope it's informative, but it's just a good time for everybody that comes up and engages. I've been told I need to run a tighter ship by one certain fellow that both of us know. I won't mention Radical Moderate's name, but he said that I need to do more of what you do on your show to minimize, what's the word to use, minimize the commenting that goes on all the time, because everybody likes to throw in comments. But I think that's what makes the show fun, is that you get a different perspective from everybody, maybe on the same thing, but you get different perspectives. So that's what makes it fun.
Well, and even maybe not doing it the way we do it here all the time, but maybe once in a while on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday or something like that, once or twice a month, you just come live by yourself or invite one guest with you type thing. I think you've done that before as well, right?
I have, and it's been successful. You're right. Because before I got doxxed last September, I was doing Sunday afternoons and Tuesday evenings, and it was just, it was just, I don't know, it was just a killer trying to keep up with all that, because you not only have to prepare for the show. You got, for every hour that you do for a show, you have to have at least 2 hours of prep time. So if you're doing 4 hours a week, you got to have at least 8 hours of prep. And just as well as I do, that normally translates into 3 or 4 per hour. So it got to be a little taxing. So I just knocked it down to 2. But you're right. Come up every now and then with a live stream, bring somebody on and have a discussion. Probably work out.
That'd be all right. But I still like the concept of the cross and the crescent the way it is with the group of people. Everybody has their own unique approach to what's being said, so you get a lot of different points of views coming at you. So I like that type of environment too, like a panel type of discussion as well. So I would never say to get rid of that, but maybe just incorporate maybe once or twice a month, just you with somebody else within there as well, maybe something. But yeah, other than that, so. Uh, we have a question this evening, Mr. Eric. The question is there evidence for Mecca? Now, I'm going to give you my answer. Notice how I caught you on that one? You
I
notice
was
how I
ready
caught
to
you?
jump on it, but go ahead. Yeah.
So, I'm going to give you my answer because I view this as like I view did Muhammad exist? I'm on the boat here.
Mm.
To me, I think that there, it I think there should be evidence for Mecca. Um, well, but what's your answer, though, Eric?
No, there's not. So we can just go ahead and close in prayer
Bam.
and call it a day.
Whew.
That's the
Live
bottom
stream's
line.
over.
There is no evidence. Well, it isn't. There isn't any evidence for Mecca. It's just that there's no evidence for a 7th century Mecca, a historical Mecca. That Mecca does not exist. The Mecca that we read about in the Quran and in the Hadith literature and the Sirah and the Talmud did not exist in the 7th century. And I'm going to demonstrate it tonight.
There we have it, people. There we have it. So before we do jump into this presentation this evening, His Minister of Fire, God bless you. Thank you so much. I do believe I know who that is, dear sister. Thank you. Revelations 21:7, Jesus said, "To him who overcomes shall inherit all things. I shall be his God, and he shall be my son." Amen. Amen. God bless you, dear sister. Thank you so much for the support. I believe it is a sister, anyways. I could be mistaken, but I do believe it is. Uh, but now we should get into the presentation. So without holding back, boom, there we go,
All
Mr.
right.
Eric.
Yeah, there's the Cross and the Crescent logo. I made that myself.
That's nice.
Yeah, I know.
I
I
like
can't. I don't get much better than that, though. So don't get your hopes up too high tonight. Okay, so I call it Meccan mythology, and the reason why I call it Meccan mythology is this is how myths are developed. They're developed from multiple sources normally, and they're corroborated with post-event attestation, meaning that you will get people attesting to this event much later than the event should be attested to. For an example, let's take the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel, the fourfold gospels. The fourfold gospels was put in on paper and being disseminated throughout the Roman Empire or throughout the Middle East or that region anyway, within 40 years of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. This, on the other hand, is much, much different, and I'm going to explain why. And let me just start with America, good old America. Oh, I'm sorry, I got to have my references here. Of course, I'm going to be using Dr. Jay Smith. He has a class that he gives out at Veritas University out in California. He gave one this spring, Islamic Origins 504, and a lot of the slideshows is from that class that we have there from him there. In that class. Then you have Dan Gibson, of course, Dan Gibson from Nabatea.net. He's published the books Early Islamic Qiblas. Quranic Geography is the one that I draw a lot of the information from today. And he's come out with a new book. If you guys don't know it, it's called Let the Stones Speak. It's not in printed format, but if you go over to Nabatea.net, you can download it for my favorite 4-letter word, free of charge. And then Dr. Rafat Amri, he wrote a book. It's called Islam in Light of History. And right here I have a link to his book, online book, where you can go in there and read it. And what he does is he focuses on pre-Islamic uh, writers and cartographers and geographers, and he goes through a whole long list of them, and he identifies how all of them state that region, all of them that comment on that comment on the region where Mecca is located, said it was uninhabitable. Nobody said that there was a city there. That's the problem. And then lastly, this guy right here, Peter Townsend, I just finished up that book, Mecca Mystery, and I've put a lot of the information from that book into this slideshow also.
So you actually saying that as Christians, when we look into something, we actually have references, unlike Muslims that give us basically a tafsir, I'll trust me, bro. Right.
It isn't just Christianity, and you'll see here. I'm going to zip through like 20 slides here real quick, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It isn't just Christianity that does this. This is how you do history. For example, the United States, Americans, when we look at the Revolutionary War, we look at cities like Philadelphia. We look at documents like the Declaration of Independence, and we love the Liberty Bell there in Philadelphia. We look at cities in Boston, Concord, where the war started. We look at Bunker Hill, where the first major engagement occurred. We'll look at the battles of Saratoga, which is the turning point of the war. Charleston, where the Continental Army lost 100,000 soldiers in one battle and almost lost the war. And then you look at Yorktown, where the war ended. All of these places are identifiable places that attest to American history. The Revolutionary War is part of being of American history. All of them existed in 1776. When we think of Rome, we have the Roman Colosseum. We have all kinds of archaeological evidence for the Roman Empire existing during the first century, when the Bible speaks about it. And we can go there today and do excavations and dig and find all kinds of artifacts. And we even find people that were contemporaneous with the gospel writers. Flavius Josephus was, anyway, that write about Jesus. And he talks about Jesus in his Antiquity of the Jews. And then you have Tacitus, is also another Roman historian that speaks about and attests to the life of Jesus Christ. You have Egypt and the pyramids and all the other archaeology that occurred there. This is from, oh boy, I can't remember the name of the city. This is where the Jews were supposedly lived. Avaris, there it is. It's Avaris. This is dig here in Avaris, and we can go in there and we can find these remnants of the buildings that were there, and we can find graves, and we can find writings that attest to Hebrew names in them, and you have all kinds of that stuff being preserved. We have Greek. The Acropolis exists today. You have all kinds of other archaeological and artifacts that exist in Greece. In Greece, when they hosted the 2000 Olympics and they were building, now keep in mind, they're building, and every time they dug into the dirt, you know what they found? Artifacts. They found so many artifacts, they ran out of space in museums, so they started putting artifacts in the subways, displays in the subways. Pretty ingenious thing, but artifacts were all over the place in Greece. And we have all kinds of literature demonstrating that Greek society existed. And you have the Chinese, clear on the other side of the planet. You have all kinds of artifacts and archaeology that we can go in there and prove that the Chinese cities and dynasties existed. And we have Chinese writing that proves all of that. You go to Peru, South America, into the Andes Mountains. That is Machu Picchu. My wife went there a couple of years ago with a friend of hers. They went down there running, of all things. She's insane. Anyway, but you go there, they have all kinds of archaeological digs that support the existence of that society at that time and in that place. You go to Babylon. I've been to Babylon. This is a picture I took personally of a relief that was in a wall in the ancient city of Babylon. There I am, sweating my Botox off. So we can go there today and still see this stuff. And you have all kinds of literature that survives the Babylonian Empire. You go to the Assyrian Empire. There I am again, a lot thinner. But you have the palace of Sennacherib, a biblical figure is there. So we can go all across the globe and dig up artifacts supporting the Bible. But when we look at Islam, Islam is much different. When we look at Islam, we have to look at three separate time periods here. Number one is the time of Muhammad. This area right here is the Hijaz, and this is the area that supposedly Muhammad lived in. Was born in, lived in from 570 to 5 or 632 when he died, and he lived in Medina. But this is the area that Islam had expanded into by 632. And then you have what they call the Rashidun period. Now, this is something important. I want people to listen to this. Everybody should know, your listeners anyway, that the Rashidun period is the period of the four rightly guided caliphs: Abu Bakr, Omar, Uthman, and Ali. Now, look how much the Islamic Empire spreads during this time period. Now, these people that lived in these areas during the spreading of Islam during the Rashidun period that were conquered, not once, not on one document anywhere at any time in any place in that entire region, mentions by name Muslims, mentions by name Islam, mentions by name any of those four caliphs that conquered them. Now, if you were being conquered, you would think somebody would write down, Omar come trashing in here from the Mecca Muslims and conquered us in the name of Islam. Nothing comes up. The only time it comes up is in this next period, is during the Umayyad dynasty. And this is where Muawiyah, the first caliph, outside of the four rightly guided caliphs, supposedly, he's finally mentioned. But he's not mentioned as the leader of Islam. He's described as the leader of the faithful, period. Nobody mentions the book. Nobody mentions the Quran. Nobody's mentioned Muhammad. Nobody's mentioned the four rightly guided caliphs during this entire period up to the Umayyad dynasty. Nobody says anything. And it's not mentioned. Muhammad is not mentioned by name, I believe, until like 690 or somewhere around there. So this is also problematic. Okay, so this is the area that we're going to be focusing on tonight, that deals with Mecca and Medina, or Mecca specifically. And why is this important? Because there's no evidence outside of Islamic sources that support the existence of Mecca in the 7th century. There's no archaeological evidence for it. There's no manuscript evidence for it. There's no corroborating Quranic evidence for the existence of Mecca in the 7th century. And I'll tell you what I mean by that here in a moment. And there's no cartological evidence. And what I mean by cartological, there's no maps. Mecca does not appear on the map until 900 AD. Let that sink in. Muhammad died in 632 AD, and it's not on any map anywhere at any time held by anybody that we know of anyway. It was on any map. And so therefore it has no foundational history. Now you compare that to Christianity. Christianity, we have, of course, Jerusalem. I just mentioned Sennacherib. We have all these things that are mentioned in the Bible. Most of them are supported by some type of artifacts, some type of documental or manuscript mention outside of Christianity, or outside of the Bible anyway, or excavating them and using archaeology. Okay, so when we think of why this is important, because Mecca is the place where Adam and Eve were cast down. To Adam and Eve. This is the beginning of human civilization, supposedly. This is where Abraham and Ishmael rebuilt the Kaaba, supposedly. Now this is 2000. Think about this. This is 2000. This city should be at least 4,000 years old. 4,000 years old. We should find something. We should find somebody mentioning it somewhere. Amazingly enough, we don't. It's called the mother of all cities. It's the place where you have all these other pagan religions that supposedly existed, and that's only found in the Sunnah, which is your Hadith literature, and the Sirah, which is the biography of Muhammad. This is where Muhammad had his prophethood, supposedly. Began it and ended it there. This is where you have graves of hundreds of prophets are supposed to be buried They're according to Kortebe. And this is where you have 1.8 billion people bow towards 5 times a day, or they're supposed to do, or supposed to anyway, if they're doing the prayers. And this is the place where every Muslim is required to go at least once in their lifetime. So Mecca is what we would consider a require. It is like this essential pillar that, when we think of a 3-legged chair, Quran, Muhammad, and you have to have Mecca. You take one of those 3 things away, and you do not have Islam. Now, when we think about what Muslims claim, and this is what Islamic Awareness is, it will come out when you go to Islamic Awareness, this most popular website out there. They always talk about this guy by the name of Ptolemy, Claudius Ptolemy, who was the curator for that massive library that existed in Alexandria, Egypt, that housed all of those great books from antiquity. And so they're saying that Ptolemy mentions Mecca, but he does not. There's a place called Makaraba. I did a slideshow and a presentation on this with Bob the Builder, and how I'm going to list just one guy. One guy here just blows this Ptolemy shtick out of the water, and I'm going to get to that here in just a second. So when we think of biblical history, nobody doubts the location of Jerusalem, going clear back to the 11th century BC. No one doubts the writings of the Jewish scribes describing the lion features and the places that these events in the Bible take place. Nobody doubts the prophets. No one doubts the geography, especially when you get in the book of Luke. I'm going to do a comparison here in a couple minutes of Luke and the Quran. You tell me which one's more authoritative. So what did other ancient writers, geographers, and cartographers say about Mecca? And I could put up a blank slide, and I did for Bob's presentation, because they say nothing is what they do. So the question is, if this is supposed to be that mother of all cities, how did everybody miss it? Now, this guy right here, Strabo, this guy is a Roman historian. He's a geographer. He accompanies this guy by the name of Gallus. Gallus is being sent from Egypt to Yemen to conquer the Yemenis in order to get control of the spice trade in the 1st century. So this is why he's sent down to Yemen. The problem with him is that he had to go through the desert, and this is a military expedition. Now, when you think of a military expeditions are normally very organized, especially the Roman legions. When they went one place to the other, they knew what they were doing. They didn't overextend their supply lines normally. They had great security on at their 12, at their 6, on 9 and 3. They knew what they were doing. And so this guy Strabo goes down with the army and takes careful records of what they encounter, and it extends all the way into about 100 miles into Arabia along the Red Sea there. And these stations, they have these. He talks about stations built by the Nabateans are part of that route. And when you think about this army going down there, the bottom line is that they starved. And when you're starving, you're desperate to find any place that would have some type of provisions to feed your soldiers. So you're going to be going to every hamlet, every ville, every town, every city, and you're going to be talking to people, taking their food and things to support your army. But you're also going to be asking them, where else can we go? Nobody, when I say nobody mentions Mecca. So this is exactly what they would be doing if they went down there. And then this is, it's even mentioned by Dio Cassius. Dio Cassius, one of the most popular Roman historians, talks about the privation and how this army starved. But Strabo, in his writing, he also mentions Archimedes, Agathartes, all these other guys that went through that region exploring, and he quotes from them, uses the places that they mention in order to guide the army down to Yemen. None of these other guys that wrote, and I went through a lot of their when I was on Bob's channel, a lot of what they had to say. None of these guys mentions Mecca either. And he mentions other villages that we know that existed at the time, and some of them still exist today. But the one thing he does not mention is Mecca. Now, I want to show you something here. This is a map, just kind of rough drawing of the route that they traveled. This army, Gallus's army, traveled down the west coast of Arabia. Now, if you look right here, this is the city that they were going to attack, Marib. They laid siege for it for like 2 months, I think it was, and then they finally gave up and said, look, we're toast. There's no way that we're going to be able to do this. But I want you to look at this city right here, Narjan. Now, Narjan is about 400 miles south of Mecca. Narjan is an outpost. It's not a very important city. It's not, a big place to go. However, I want to compare Narjan to Mecca. This place sits on layers of archaeological evidence and artifacts supporting its existence all the way back to the first century. It's listed by Strabo and all kinds of other historians. It's listed on the trade routes and maps. And it even has a story about a local bishop who was martyred there. It's a hamlet, but it's insignificant when compared to Mecca. It's an insignificant blot on the planet. But yet we have all kinds of evidence for the existence of this town, but we have nothing for Mecca, nothing even close. It has exponentially more evidence for it than Mecca does. And then you have the Periplus of the Eurythian Sea. Now, this is a book. I'm just going to go through this real quick. It's considered most of the reliable sources on the trade routes of Arabia, and it's first century stuff. I'm not going to get too down in the weeds for it, but the bottom line is Mecca is not mentioned in this one either. And this is probably the most popular book describing Arabia at that time, Western Arabia. Mecca is not mentioned in this book either. There's nothing there. So how do we determine historical facts? Does anybody have any questions so far? I'm not even watching the chat.
No, Eric, no, man. I already told people. I said after the presentation, if anyone has questions or pushback, can join. They come up here live. They can come up here and get that smoke. It'll turn into an ACGI. Anyone can get it.
Okay. All right. So I'm a history guy. This is what my undergrad is. This is what I teach. So I know how historical facts are determined. You can get historical facts, and you can derive them from documentary evidences. What I mean by that is written documents, written sources. And we have an abundance of written sources from Arabia during this time period, during the 7th century anyway, and all the way up to it, for that matter, because of the dry climate. The dry climate there is a bonus for preserving all of these documents that are supposed to provide evidence for Mecca. And when we look at these documents, you look at the reliability of the author, the distance between the time that they're commenting on to the time that it's written down to the time that we have the earliest manuscript. You look at the early distribution of that. For example, the Gospels were distributed early. And then you look at, for example, I want to make sure that you understand that this type of tradition and these documents trump oral tradition in any context at any time. And we have documents that describe the trade routes that these traders took. We have formal descriptions of the geography there. We have gazetteers, and what these are, they're like geographical dictionaries that give you the population, that give you the ethnic makeup, it describes the culture at the time. These were just a wealth of descriptions of the different tribes that lived in those regions. And the reason why is because these empires had to recruit mercenaries for their army. So if they needed to have information on a certain tribe, they needed to know what that tribe, what language they spoke, what were some of the things that they traded in, what were some of the religious traditions, what was important to them, who their king might be, what you might want to watch out for if you go into their camps or whatever. So these gazetteers would provide that information for these empires to go out there and recruit for their armies. You had to have it. And then, of course, you have letters, which we would call correspondence. Archaeological evidence suffices for historical evidence. And this would be something like, oh, I don't know, an old mosque that doesn't face the right direction, for an example. That's kind of like the death nail in Islam's shtick of Mecca in the 1st century, or the 7th century.
So, like documents that you're talking about, I'll just throw a question in there for you,
Okay.
Brother Eric. So, just like if there were to be these very wonderful poets around Arabia, Mecca, at the time Mecca existed, you would think that there would be writings of these people from there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. You would think that they would be preserved. You would think that they would be widely distributed, or copies would be made and sent around. I get it. When we're talking about Mecca, nothing grows there because they only get 4 inches of rain a year, so they don't have any paper, they don't have any wood or anything there's no livestock to write it out, your poems out on or out upon. But the fact of the matter is that nobody mentions the Qurayshi tribe. Nobody. It's not mentioned anywhere outside of Islamic literature. That was kind of surprising.
Not the Qurayshi tribe. There's no mention of that.
Nobody talks about them, and nobody talks about what great poets they were. And I remember Hamza. There was a spot on that he was running his mouth to somebody saying, well, we know Muhammad wrote great poetry because all the poets in Mecca said that he was such a great poet. I'm like, okay, prove it. Give me their names. Tell me who they are, where you got your information from, and what they had to say. And the bottom line is that you cannot, unless you go to 9th century documents in the Hadith literature, and that's what they are, 9th century documents. So the bottom line is that even if there were poets writing it down, there's nothing that we have outside of Islamic literature supporting that. And I'm going to tell you why we can't trust that literature here in a little bit.
And I'm going to tell you that I've got a treat for you with Hamza, the little leprechaun, after you're done this. Just a little laugh. That's all.
Okay. Is he in the audience?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay.
There's a video, I'm not sure if you've seen of him, that you need to see.
I think didn't you show that on Sunday? Or you showed one on Sunday?
No, that was just one.
That's one. Okay. All right. Well, we'll watch it. Okay, cool. Okay. So, and then plus maps, of course. Maps are kind of important. And then artifacts like coins, pottery, tools, all these support civilizations and their locations if you find these things in that region. The problem is that we do not have any written sources mentioning Mecca in the 7th century. We don't have any archaeological evidence supporting the existence of Mecca in the 7th century. Mecca is not mentioned on any maps prior to the 7th century, and there's no artifacts that have been discovered in Mecca that point to it existing prior to the 7th century. And then the last thing that you could possibly use is oral sources, and those are worthless considering their development during the Abbasid dynasty. So we don't have any documents supporting Mecca. There's no artifacts until the 12th century, no archaeological evidence, and all of that has been destroyed. Oh, by the way, we've covered it on several times on my show, showing that this building project that they're doing in Mecca, they're just cementing the whole thing over. They're digging up all that stuff, laying these foundations for these huge skyscrapers and all these buildings in and around the Kaaba region, which was Mecca, supposedly, without preserving any of the artifacts that they dug up. If you go to any of these other civilizations that I pointed to, especially let's talk about Greece for just a second, and I told you that they were building for the 2000 Olympics. Every time that they put that shovel in the dirt, they were digging something out, and they had to be very careful to preserve these artifacts. Do you think that these jokers over in Saudi Arabia did that? No. And the reason why they didn't, because they know there's nothing there. So when we look at the evidence for Mecca, it's all secondary and tertiary sources 2 centuries removed from its supposed existence. That's the evidence that we have for Mecca today. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about. When you look at, here's the Kaaba right here. Here's Safa and Marwa, those 2 mountains overlooking the Kaaba. Now, if you notice, those mountains aren't mountains. They're nothing but big rocks. But everything around there has been dug up to include Muhammad's supposed birth house, the house of his wife Khadijah. All that stuff is gone. It's all been dug up and cemented over. And all these other things that would have supported the existence of that city, for example, supposed walls that would have that Mecca was supposed to be surrounded by, gone. Everything's cemented over. There's nothing there. But when we look at the evidence for Mecca, you have to go to the Quran. Well, if you go to the Quran, it depends on which Quran you're going to look at. Because we have Qurans that predate the Quran. The Sanda manuscript dates clear back into the 5th century, for crying out loud. The Quran wasn't supposed to put to ink until the 7th century. So we got a Quran that exists, that predates the Quran by 2 centuries. And then it goes all the way out to the 8th century. And the Mecca is only mentioned one time in the Quran anyway, by name. It'll call it the Masjid al-Haram. It'll say the forbidden place, or things of that nature. But it does not mention Mecca by name except in one place. Then you have the biography of Muhammad. And look, when this was the earliest copy we have of that is 200 years after the death of Muhammad. And Ibn Hisham even admits that he embellished or edited even Ishaq's edition, which was written over 100 years after the death of Muhammad, supposedly. And then you have the Hadith literature. Now, this is important to understand. This is what I was mentioning earlier. The Hadith literature is developed during the Abbasid Empire. And the reason why we can see it developing there is because the Umayyad Empire, which existed in Damascus, it moves to Baghdad under the Abbasids. Now, when you move to to that region, then you're running into Jews, and the Jews had this tradition of the Mishnah. This is the oral traditions. Well, now these oral traditions of the Jews are finally making it to paper. And this is where we have the Babylonian Talmud. This is where the development of the Babylonian Talmud existed. So these guys going to Baghdad start seeing the value of having these traditions. Well, they start developing this hadith literature, and they're copying off, because nobody commanded people to remember what the prophet said, or Muhammad supposedly said, or what he did. They were just commanded to memorize the Quran. Well, so now you have this exponential increase of people. Oh, I remember what so and so said. He said that so and so, and the so and so over here said that, and so and so here said, and it's very similar to the oral traditions that we find in the Mishnah traditions within Judaism. Kind of ironic how all that happens just like that. But the Hadith literature is not written down until 870 is the earliest that we have a Bukhari. Now, Bukhari, this is 240 years after Muhammad's dead. Now, come on. You're going to believe what Bukhari has to say and he's authoritative?
Well,
Muslim?
Also, I believe that it is said that Sahih or Imam Bukhari collected, what was it, over 600,000 different hadith and had to go through them. Yep. Now, if you did the math on going through and verifying 600,000 different hadith, I'm wondering how old the guy was.
Right. Yeah. How long does it take to do? You're right. How long did it take to go through all of those and determine the validity?
Well, let's just say 1 day. It would take 1 full day, and that would still be that would be hard, right? Mm-hmm. Because you'd have to go around, collect it. You'd have to carefully read it, make sure there's other. Look, but let's just say a day to be nice. 600,000 days.
That's like what? 100 years or 200 years or whatever.
200,
right.
200 years old.
Yeah. Who's this Mercedes fan? Let's debate. I will debunk you. Okay.
I will debunk you. I think it's just a troll.
Okay. Well, anyway, he can debunk me when I get done and pick whatever he wants to. Okay. So we also have Al-Nasi. That's 915 for crying out. That's almost 300 years after the death of Muhammad. If you believe Muhammad died in 632. And then Abu Dawud, Al-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, all these guys.
Are you given the six authentic hadith collections right there on the paper that a Sunni Muslim has to accept? Sunan al-Nasai, Sunan Abu Dawud, Jami al-Tirmidhi, Sunan Ibn Majah, and of
Mhm.
course the main two is Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. But
Exactly.
they do have to accept those other four that you put up there. They're authoritative in Sunni Islam.
Yes, and I was going to list the ones for Shia Muslim, but I just got lazy and didn't
Yeah,
put them up there. But they're even later than the Sunni Muslims
yeah,
ones.
she don't even have a dog in the fight, I think, when it
Yeah.
comes to this.
Okay, so here you have 6 to 7 generations of people uh, before this stuff is written down and compiled. You have some people say it was written down. Okay, fine, it was written down, but they're finally compiled, really, and they're compiled based on what? How do you determine the veracity to these? It's just one big jumbled, garbled mess, is what it is. Written and described as by that Imam out of Houston, as people would fabricate them, make them up to make political points against one another. Oh, really? Well, how do you know? Well, how do you trust any of it then if you know that they're doing that in the Sahih literature, the most authentic one? It's one big mess, is what it is. Okay, so now let's look at Mecca. Let's focus on this a little bit here. Okay, according to the Quran, this is supposed to be where the prophet was from. It has vegetation, and if it has vegetation, it has to have water. It's in a valley that is supported by a parallel valley. This is according to Hisham in Hisham in the Sirah, and then you have the Hadith literature that goes on that along with it. You have Sathamara, evidently had shrines on top of them before Islam. It's supposed to have a stream going through it. Nobody has been able to find this stream going through Mecca. It's not there. It's supposed to have fields. If you look at Mecca, Mecca is a desert. There are no fields there. There's no water there. Nothing grows, even if they had fields, because it would be drought-like conditions perpetually. Nothing. It was supposed to have trees. Now, if you would go out to test some of the soil samples in and around Mecca that are undisturbed, I would challenge anybody to find the pollens, the spores, or anything to support the existence of trees in that region. If it has it, provide the evidence. The problem is that they've gone out there. We know they've gone out there. You have to go know that they've gone out there to try to find this, because if they did find it, it would be all over the news. But there's nothing there. It's supposed to have clay and loam, meaning that it's supposed to have places where you can grow crops. It's supposed to have grapes. Really? You know how much water it takes to grow grapes? It's supposed to have grain and pomegranates. All that stuff is in the Islamic literature. It's supposed to have olive trees. Olive trees do not, have not, will not grow in Mecca, period, unless you bring them in and artificially provide water to them. They're not going to grow. The places that have olive trees are much farther north in the Mediterranean region. It's supposed to have mountains overlooking the Kaaba. I'm going to show you a picture of those supposed mountains here in just a little bit. And there's supposed to be the mushrikun there, these pagans that had livestock. You are not going to raise livestock in the middle of a desert, period. It can't happen, but yet we're supposed to believe that they were raising livestock there for some strange reason. It's not in a valley. There are no mountains near it. The closest mountain is 2 miles away. And it has none of this vegetation that I listed on there. It's too dry and it's too hot to have been a city. Now here, when we look at what it does describe, and if you get Dan Gibson's Chronic Geography, this is what it does describe. It talks about the geography and I tell you, the geography in the Quran is almost absent, almost completely absent. It doesn't describe hardly anything. There's only 9 different places that are named in the Quran, and that's just mainly referring to the people of, let's say, Ad, or the people of Talmud, or the people of Midian, but it doesn't name specific places. Ad is mentioned 23 times. Talmud is mentioned 24 times. Now notice where they are in relationship to Mecca. Mecca is clear down here. These things are like 600 miles away from Mecca. So these 3 civilizations, these 3 people groups is mentioned. They're mentioned in the Quran, but they're nowhere near where Mecca is. This is why Dan Gibson, and I'm not going to try to push his theory at all, but this is why he thinks that this Mecca was supposed to be Petra, and he's got a lot of great evidence for it. But I'm not. That's not the point I'm trying to make tonight. I'm just trying to make the point that Mecca didn't exist, has no evidence for it, and when it does, the Quran does mention different locations. It's mentioning locations that aren't even close.
Now, my question here for you, Eric, would the people of Talmud, like that area, the people of Ad, and that, would that area fit more of the description that we find in the Hadith?
Yeah, when we start talking about growing crops, growing vegetation, being able, this is a completely different region than what it is down here as far as what the climate is. And I'm going to show you pictures
So it's
of,
almost like the people are describing an area that's 600 miles away from where it's supposed to be, is what you're
yes,
saying.
yes, exactly. For example, in one of the hadith, it talks about the going to Medina and attacking, or from Mecca and attacking it from the north. Why would you go north of Medina and then attack it from the north when it's just a straight shot up, from the south? That's just one of the things that's in the Hadith literature. And remember, now the Hadith literature was developed 200 years after the death, 240 years after Muhammad died. And it was developed by the Abbasids, and their empire was on the decline. So I'm thinking, and this is after reading Peter Townsend's book and a couple of other articles on this, I'm thinking that the Abbasids needed to find a way to bolster up their empire. So they start developing all of this literature to support their claims on Islam and give them some type of validity, not validity, that's not the word, some type of authority over the peoples. And it didn't work in the end. However, we ended up with what we have now in all of this Hadith literature. There's other problems for Mecca. Its capitals, its initial capitals under the Umayyad Empire was in Damascus. The Abbasid Empire, its capital was in Baghdad. Now look at how far away it is. These things are over 1,000 miles each away from Mecca, the holy city. What are they doing clear up here if the origins of their empire are down here and the practice of it is down here? Why are they living up here? Why are they buying all the land up here when they're supposed to be down here? It makes zero sense. None of the rightly guided caliphs are mentioned anywhere. I mentioned this earlier in the literature outside of Islamic literature. Where did somebody mention Abu Bakr? Where did somebody mention Umar, Uthman, Ali outside of Islamic literature? These are the guys that went to these areas, conquered them. Somebody would have said something saying it was Ali and his armies came in here and conquered. Nobody says anything. We don't have anything demonstrating that. If we do, I'd like to see it. Let's see. The Quraysh tribe is not mentioned anywhere outside of Islamic literature, which is kind of odd. If they're supposed to be the most powerful tribe in the region, most popular tribe in the region, nothing. Tabari mentions that people, I mentioned this, entered Mecca from the south, yet Medina is north. He also says that the Quraysh of Mecca attacked Medina from the north. So, Tabari even has it backwards if Mecca is indeed that city down here instead of something up here. It's not making any sense. Now, when we look at the location of Mecca and how it's mentioned in the Quran, and compare that to the Gospel of Luke, geography anyway. The Quran has 6,200 verses where the Gospel of Luke has 1,100, more or less. In the Quran, we find 65 references. In the Gospel of Luke, now think about this. Just in a book 1/5 the size, a little under 1/5 the size of the Quran, you have almost twice as many geographical references. You only have 9 mentioned here, where you have 31 mentioned in Luke. In the Quran, they're way too far north to be able to be interacting with the people of Mecca. If they are indeed interacting with the people of Ad, interacting with the people of Midian or Thalmud, what are you going 600 miles interacting and then coming back to Mecca? No. Whereas in the Bible, they're right exactly where they're supposed to belong. So the ones that are mentioned in the Quran are the wrong places. In the Bible, they're all in the right places. So what do we do with Mecca now? Well, when we look at Mecca today, they're having a major building project there. Ain't that sweet? Look at all this construction going on there. They even built this clock tower, this big old clock tower. It's like the 4th largest building in the world right now. And it's got, of course, the largest face. And what they're doing is they are going to try to change it from Greenwich Mean Time, which is in England, to Mecca Mean Time. So when the day starts, like we're 6 hours behind, what are 6, 7 hours? It doesn't matter, but you know what I'm saying. It goes, you have your different time zones. They want to start the time zone in Mecca as opposed to Greenwich. That's the idea behind it anyway. But when we look at it, this is what's going on. They're destroying the evidence that did not exist. They're paving over the entire thing, making it impossible for archaeologists to get in there and do their jobs. It's absolutely crazy what these people are doing. Did I have something else that I was pointing out in there? No. Okay. So was Mecca known at this time? If it's supposed to be the oldest city mankind, it is really weird how the people and the civilizations around them had no idea that this 4,000-year-old city existed. You start with the Assyrian Empire. This is where you have Sargon, who carried off the southern kingdom, and Sennacherib, who laid siege to Jerusalem. From them, no, nothing from them. What about the Babylonians? You know, the time of David and Jeremiah and all those guys. No, not a thing from the Babylonians. How about the Roman Empire? Anybody from the Roman Empire mention them? You know, the guys that we mentioned, Strabo, Pliny the Younger, Ptolemy. I dare you, I double dog dare you to try to tell me Ptolemy mentions the Mecca. Try to tell me how Makarova is supposed to be Mecca. What about the Persian Empire, the Sassanians? Nothing from them. How about the empires that were closer to them? Let's talk about the Nabateans. Nope, nothing from the Nabateans. How about the Sabians? Nope, nothing there. How about the Haimars? Nope, nothing there. Azidi? Nope. How about the Kinda? Nope. Oh, no, I'm supposed to be telling you about these things. Hold on just a second. I have my notes here. Let's see here. Sorry. Let's see here. The Kadar Empire. Do I have them up here yet? No, there they are. Okay. These guys existed 8 to 4 centuries. They engaged in the spice trade, mentioned in Hebrew literature, Assyrian literature, Greek sources, but don't mention Mecca. The Nabateans right here. These guys existed in the 2nd century BC to 106 AD. We have a list of their kings. We have a list of wars that they fought. We have a list of the extent of trade that they engaged in. We include the locations and some of the people. They're tracked from the Romans, Syrian, and Ethiopia, but no mention of Mecca. How about the Haimar kingdom down here? Let's see here. They were several rulers of the Haimar kingdom were Jewish. We have all kinds of documents describing their kings. We have inscriptions on buildings and dams, all kinds of records, trading caravans going through the region, but no mention of Mecca. How about Kinda? Do I have Kinda? Oh, there's Kinda right there. Kinda. Kinda is 500 miles, lists several kings. We have those lists of the kings. We have documents describing their interactions with the Haimar kingdom down here, their interactions with these guys down here. The Lachemids to the north, which was part of the Sasanian Empire that supported the Sassanians. Anyway, let's see. No mention of Mecca, though. How about these? Oh, here we are. Okay, these ones over here in Africa. Ethiopia and Eritrea. Let's see, they engaged in sea trading. Several African civilizations are described, but no mention of Mecca. So the bottom line is that none of these empires that exist around them mention Mecca. Now, here's another couple other problems. This Najran, I talked about that. You have Sana, it was mentioned by in Taif and Yathrib and Khaybar. They're all mentioned in Greek trading documents. Mamre is mentioned. Where's Mamre? Mamre, where did I go? Here, it's up here in the north. Petra is mentioned in several different writings. Madrib, I talked about how Strabo describes the siege on Madrib. All of these insignificant, what we would think of as insignificant towns compared to the mother of all cities, a 4,000-year-old city, are mentioned in all kinds of other literature, but they don't mention Mecca. That is definitely problematic. Now, when we look at Mecca to other known cities, you got Aden down here, Sana, of course, Najran, Taif, Yathrib, Tabuk, Petra, and Gaza. You have all these cities mentioned here. Now, Mecca is supposed to be on a trade route. You got Aden, Sana, Najran, Taif, Yathrib, Tabuk, and notice how they stay all up on the plateau here in Gaza. Okay, and Mecca is supposed to be down here. This is 3,000. They got to go down a 3,000-foot drop to get to Mecca if it's supposed to be on this trade route, and then go back up another 3,000 feet to get back on the trade route. It makes zero sense to have Mecca on any trade route, overland trade route, at all. Period. Okay, the earliest Memphis that we reference that we do have to Mecca, it doesn't come until 641 AD in the Apocalypse Pseudo Methodus Continuia Byzantia Arabica. I want to say that 5 times, but this is written over 100 years. Nobody mentions Mecca for over 100 years after Muhammad. The earliest map mentioning Mecca, showing Mecca, is 900 years after, or 900 years. That's 268 years after the death of Muhammad. That is just crazy, crazy to not have that mentioned. When we look at the maps, I mean, here are all kinds of maps from the second century, more from the second century, no Mecca, 7th century map, no Mecca, nothing there. Nobody's heard of this place. Another 7th century, no Mecca on the maps. There's nothing there. It was supposed to be the center of trade, really? Dr. Patricia Crona, in her book, Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam, debunks this because she talks about what commodity are they going to be dragging through this desert. Folks, it gets to be 125 degrees in that area. I mean, the sun is so hot, it makes noise. It's so hot there. Nobody's going to want to travel through that, especially on a main or a trade route through that region. It's way too hot. And what are you going to drag through there? That's so important. The incense of the spice trade dried up almost completely. Now, this is the important part because of Christianity. All these pagan religions that use spices for incense and burning for religious practices, they were going away. Why? Because the advent of Christianity. It had collapsed and it wasn't going on. So there's no reason to continue or to at least have some type of trade going through 3,000 feet down off the plateau to Mecca and then a 3,000 feet back up where there's no water and there's nothing to feed your animals. Why go there? And the only thing that they would have been trading were dates, leather, and maybe salt. And you cannot raise armies, be the center of trade, the mother of all cities, if that's the only thing that you are engaging in. And so she debunks Montgomery Watt's trade theory, saying that it went overland. If you look at this is his theory. It initially comes from India, the Indian subcontinent, and goes through the Sasanian Empire, and then makes its way into the Byzantine Empire, overland in the north. Well, that's eventually shut down, and then they have to go overland to, from Aden all the way up to Gaza on that, but Mecca is supposed to be on that trade route, and it's not, because look what it's supposed to do. We're supposed to go from Aden to Sana'a up to Taif, and then go over to Mecca, or down 3,000 feet to Mecca, and then come up off of the back up to the plateau another 3,000 feet, and then go to Gaza. Why? That makes no sense. And the reason why it doesn't make any sense is because you've got to come 3,000 feet off the plateau to someplace that doesn't have anything to feed your animals with or water them with. There's nothing there. And then on top of that, why even unload stuff in Aden to begin with, when all you have to do is just go up the Red Sea, and you have all of these ports on the Egyptian side of the Red Sea all the way up to Petra? Why do that? It makes no sense. You just go up the Gulf of Aqaba, and then it's going to take you almost up to Petra. It makes no sense to offload that stuff when you can keep it on a boat going the same way. So the trade route theory is debunked. Okay, so when we look through the, let's see, how do you think this could stomach food or smell? I don't know what that means. Let's see here. When we look at the
don't pay attention to Darham. He's sometimes he is talking to other people into the chat, and then not the people up here on the panel.
Oh, okay. All right, so all these cities are known cities on the African side of the coastline, from Egypt down to Eritrea to Ethiopia. And let's see here. And they all exist or pre-exist Islam, and they're all within like a day's travel journey from one another. The only one that exists on the Arabian side is Yambu, and that was supposed to support the city of Medina. But what we don't have is, you don't have anything for Jeddah, and you don't have anything for Mecca prior to the 8th century. There's nothing there. There's no archaeological evidence, artifacts, writings, or anything supporting the existence of those ports. And we would naturally have the writings of those ports, if those two cities existed, with all the Greek cartographers, all the Greek geographers. For Pliny the Younger or the Elder, Strabo, Agatharchides, all kinds of other ones that they had that I can't name off the top of my head, that wrote about that region, but somehow missed that port, that most important part. It doesn't exist, is why. Okay, so why isn't there any history in the Mecca? Because it didn't exist. And when we look at these pictures of Mecca, when we look at the soil there's nothing in the soil that would indicate that there was any water or any trees or anything. When you look at this, when you look at these pictures, there's nothing growing. How are you going to feed an army? How are you going to feed people if you don't have anything growing out in that area? You're going to have to import everything. What's the point of importing everything if you don't have anything to sell? It makes zero sense. So we understand, and this is the new thing from Jay Smith. He's saying that civilizations need water. When we look at how dry this region looks, you can see that there isn't any water to provide people. If you don't have any water, of course, you're not going to have food. You don't have any food, you're not going to have any people. You don't have any people, you're not going to have any cities. You don't have any cities, you're not going to have any civilization. And if you don't have any civilization, you have no history. You have no history, you have no Islam. It's that simple. So I think that one is the easiest way to debunk Mecca, by just using the water thing. But the other way to do it is just ask for evidence of its existence, because there isn't anything. So this whole thing about Mecca in Islam, it's built on a myth. But there's the Zamzam well.
But we've got the Zamzam.
Yes, this is supposed to be this fountain of water that helped Miss Hagar out. And here's what we know about the well. Not a lot. This right here is just a picture, an old picture, because people, when they picture wells, they got these two posts going up, and then they got a post going up, and then you crank up a bucket or something. That's not how most wells work. Most wells had like a set of stairs going down to them, and they would have to, get the buckets of water and haul all the way up to the top. And this is, when we start talking about this excuse that they use, that Rebecca was only 3 years old when Isaac married her. Think of how many trips that she had to make down to that well in order to fill up those troughs for all those camels. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that's the earliest picture that they have of the Zamzam well. And you can see looking down there in the 1950s, drawing water in 53. Then they built a building over it. And then they put the well underground. I don't know if people realize that. The well is underground today. You can't see it. As a matter of fact, right here is the circles where it marks the spot. And now they have a museum dedicated to the Zamzam well. But here's a nagging problem. Sorry, hold on. When we look at the Zamzam well, number one, they moved it underground in 1963, but then they had to dig it deeper in order to continue to get water out of it. It's, this thing's like 90 feet deep. Or no, 31 meters deep. So it's like almost 90 feet deep. But here's the problem with it. It's only 21 yards, about 21 meters away from the Kaaba. So if this well was supposed to be produced or discovered by Hagar when she's running in between the hills and the mountains of Safa and Marwa, and Ishmael and Abraham supposedly rebuilt the Kaaba, why don't they just say, why doesn't Abraham say, hey, Ishmael, go tell your mama to get out of the backyard and come back into the house and quit looking for water out there, because she's only 21 yards from the Kaaba. So how can that be? How can that possibly be if that is in fact supposed to be the Zamzam well is supposed to correlate to the Kaaba? It makes absolutely zero sense. She was, when considering when considering how the story is supposed to go and how this ritual done during the Hajj is supposed to carry on. When we look at Safa and Marwa, these are nothing. They're supposed to be mountains. Here's Safa and Marwa right here. That's where they are. They're inside of a building.
They're monsters.
That's how big those mountains are, that they put them inside of a building. They're only about 450 feet apart. So if you go back and forth like Hagar is supposed to do, had supposedly done, back and forth 7 times, it comes out to 1.96 miles is how far you got to go. So you got to be able to go 1.96 miles in order to fulfill that part of the Hajj. But they're only 65. Safa is only 65 feet. Marwa is only 75 feet tall. These things are not big at all. They're not mountains. And they're not even hills, if you will. They're just big rocks.
I'm glad that Allah placed 65-foot mountains upon the earth to stabilize it.
Alhamdulillah. Thank God he did that, right? Let's see here. So the bottom line is these things ain't mountains. They're just rocks. And so, in other words, Hagar is running in between 2 rocks, not mountains, in her backyard. And we're supposed to believe that because here's one of the hills, here's the other one, and here's where the Zamzam well is. So when we look at how close proximity these things are, it's absolutely absurd to think that story is true. And here's people outside of that that building that houses the Safa and Marwa.
It's pretty bad when you have buildings bigger than the mountains.
Yeah, and it's air conditioned. I'm just waiting for him to put that speed walker in there. That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh, you're getting the conclusions?
Yeah, I'm done.
Before you start that, I don't even put the link out for people.
Okay. Let's see here. So conclusions. What conclusions can we arrive at here? Number one, Mecca is supposed to be one of those three legs of that chair for Islam. You take Mecca away and the entire thing fails. We know it's important because it's supposed to be the first city of all mankind. Evidently, Adam and Eve are supposed to have been there. When we look at Mecca in the Quran, the traditions, it just simply does not hold up to the historical method. When you use the historical method to arrive at facts from the past, Mecca does not meet that test, period. We have more historical facts for Sodom and Gomorrah than we do for Mecca. That's just a fact. When we think that Mecca had all of these features like trees, olive trees, grapes, loam, livestock, that's simply not true. That's impossible to raise that in that arid region. And to think that it's supposed to be the greatest city in history is just, and it's only mentioned one time in the Quran, is absolutely absurd. You think Jerusalem, which is the center of Judaism and essentially Christianity in the first century anyway, it's mentioned over 700 times in the Bible. And the Quran's only mentioned once, or Mecca's only mentioned once in the Quran. Really? Geographically, it doesn't meet the test when we start looking at the geographical locations that are mentioned there. It fails. It fails completely with that. It's 600 miles off. When we look at the, let's see, even the Arabic word endings used in the Quran do not come from Mecca, but from the Nabatean Aramaic. There's a book right here. Right here.
I got to mention this. This guy says in the chat,
yes,
Mecca is the metaphorical. You like that one, don't you?
I'm going to write that one down.
Laughing as soon as I saw
metaphorical. That's going to be in my next presentation. I'm trying to get on Adam Ticker's channel. I'm going to put it.
That's a good one, Manuel. God bless you, man.
Way to go, brother. I like that. Okay, it's where all these prophets are supposed to be buried, because in Islam, if you die, you're supposed to be buried the same day. I hate to admit this, but I watch a lot of videos by Yasser Qadi. Historical video, his take on Islamic history. And he was mentioning that there was one caliph that's buried clear up in, I believe he said Turkey. He's like, how did this caliph get up in Turkey when he's supposed to be down here? So anyway, let's see, Saudi Arabians. Let's see, it seems Saudi Arabia has basically stolen the history in order to put Mecca under their control. When you look at the surrounding civilizations, nobody's heard of Mecca. I mean, every single one, every single civilization, every single writing that we have from all of those towns, those things have been. And think of how well preserved they are in that area, in that region of the world. It's very arid, very dry. Stuff does not decompose because of that. And nobody mentions Mecca prior to the 7th century. Nobody. But when we look at these other places like Marib, Sana, Najran, that we talked about, all these other places, they're mentioned and they're well documented, well attested to, but not Mecca. Why is that? Why is everything well attested to and documented, but not Mecca? That's very problematic. When we look at the trade route and trade route theory, that does not make any sense, especially when you got to come 3,000 feet off of the plateau. It's not mentioned anywhere until 741 is the earliest mention of it. It's not put in any map until 900. When we look at Ptolemy writing in the 2nd century, talking about Arabian geography, he does not list Mecca as much as Muslims want to say it is. That was something that was inserted in the 16th century by a guy trying to make sense of all of it. And it was just kind of like this garbage in, garbage out thing. Well, Makaraba is Mecca, Mecca is Makaraba, and everybody starts repeating it, but nobody can prove it. When we go back and look where Ptolemy actually places that on the map, it's east of Mecca. It's east of Medina. And Mecca is southwest of Medina, number one. And number two, this is the only Ptolemy's writings is the only one that mentions this town or this city. Nobody else knew about Makaraba. Very odd. Let's see. We talked about the trade route theory, how that was debunked. And let's see. And the Zamzam well cannot produce enough water for anybody. So somewhere, sometime, it should have been known about that city. And that's all I have. Aren't you glad?
And there we are. We have it. We have it.
Man,
actually, that was pretty good. That was only about an hour. Yeah.
That's 53 slides.
That's not bad. And 53 slides in an hour. You went through them pretty quick, actually. And that was actually a lot of information. The first question.
Hold on. Let me just say this. Let me just say this, Chris.
Okay.
If anybody wants this slideshow, you can email me at ericthekefer@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send you the slideshow.
Do you want to go ahead and put your email into the private chat, and I'll copy and paste it and
How
put
do
it
I
into
do
the
that?
live chat
Yeah.
for you.
Here we go.
And that was going to be the
Oh,
first.
private chat. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
That
Yep.
was going to be the first question that I was going to ask you. Was, is there a way that somebody could have access to these slides? Um, so yeah, thank you very much for
Absolutely.
answering
But
that.
okay, if you do that, but if they do that and they do present it publicly, I would ask that they give attribution to those sources that I provided. Leave that attribution slide in there. And that's one of the things that Jay Smith had asked us to do, is to make sure that it's fine to go ahead and use his material. It's just make sure that you do the right thing. The scholarly right thing to do is by providing proper attribution to the people who provided you the information. Because I'm not a wizard or smart. None of this stuff is my original source. I've been, I got whole bookshelves of stuff here, and of course articles. Doesn't matter. I got a stack of articles that I read too.
So the biggest thing here that I've found is that Mecca is described is basically as an oasis. You're gonna have grapes. There's shrubbery around. There's a couple of mountains in between and whatnot. Um, but the problem is it's not there. And it seems to me, it almost seems to me from the way that you've um, presented your presentation, is that they were describing something more north, about 500 miles north, probably. Maybe not in the same area as Thamud and whatnot, maybe a little south from that, but I'm assuming the same area.
It's in the same region as the area that they describe, as far as the geography, the animal husbandry, the life drive, at least having the ability, just the ability to raise livestock. You need water, and Mecca does not have it. But the further north you get, you have a more temperate climate, especially when you get into the Mediterranean region. It's much more temperate there, and you can grow crops. I mean, you look at Israel today, and that region today. You can have olive trees. Now you're not going to have, these big cornfields like you do in Kafirstan, or these soybean fields, but you're going to be able to provide. You can be able to to raise goats and sheep and have flocks and things of this nature. Down there, you don't have it. It just does not exist. It does. You're right. So there's no correlation as far as the geography is concerned, and what is written in the Hadith literature and in the Quran. There's no correlation. You can't reconcile those differences.
Now, what I would the first thing that I would say here is that a lot of Muslims pushback is going to be absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, right? So you couldn't say just because it's not there doesn't mean that it didn't exist. And now I think that you would agree to a certain point with that statement. But I think that the way that we look at this as being, there should be evidence, and we're not saying that it didn't exist, but the probability shows that it didn't exist. Is that where you're at?
No, I'm saying it. There's zero chance that this city existed in the 7th century. I'm that confident of it, and here's the reason why. When we look at all kinds of different cultures, from you can go back 2, 3, 4,000 years, and you look at these cultures. There's archaeological evidence supporting them. There are artifacts supporting them. There are regional attestations to these places supporting their existences. Now, I'm not saying every city on the planet or every town that ever existed needs to have some type of physical evidence, whether that's documents, maps, artifacts, archaeological digs, or whatever. I'm not saying that. But is it a city as important as Mecca is? When we look at the narrative, the standard Islamic narrative, the standard Islamic narrative, none of that evidence that is provided for the city of Mecca is correlates to where Mecca is today. There's a guy that wrote in the chat here, why would they choose Mecca? And that's a great.
That was the question I was about to let you answer. Go
Okay,
ahead.
that's a great question. If you look at Islamic history, when the Umayyad Caliphate was in Damascus and it was being challenged by the Abbasid Empire, the, what's his name? Ibn Zubair, I think his name was. He is the one that moved it out of their sphere of influence. This is what's being hypothesized, that he moved it out of, and I'm not endorsing this, but this is just an idea that somebody um, has come up with, is that he moved it out of the sphere of influence from the Abbasid Empire to keep them from influencing or taking away power from him and giving it to them. So he moves it completely away from where they can go out and reach out and touch it. Let's just put it that way. They cannot reach out and touch Mecca because it's so far south. It's 1,000 miles away. So he moves it that far south. It was Ibn Zubair who did it. Now, whether that's true or not, nobody knows. But if you look at what Dan Gibson describes that existed in Petra, and you move Petra to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, then it makes sense, because Petra has all of these descriptions of what Mecca was supposed to look like there within Petra itself. And one thing that I did not know, but if you go to all the Islamic literature, it's like somebody went through all of the Islamic literature and crossed off any reference to Petra. They're like, this place doesn't exist. Nowhere on the map. They'll describe all kinds of other places, but they'll never mention Petra.
That's crazy.
So I'm thinking I'm thinking that's the one that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, sense.
But that's 200 years after the fact too. You got to remember that, or not 200, about 150 years after the fact.
True enough. True enough. So it doesn't look like there's too many more questions down there in the chat. I do want to leave you with a laugh. So I have a 2-minute video here. Look at that. Look at that face. In that face only a mother could love right there. I'm just joking. Oh, before we do this, let me drop this down. Oh, we got somebody here. I think he's going to let you have it.
Okay.
What's up, Radical?
Oh, rad.
Radical Muslim here. You kafir. You Islamophobes.
I destroyed your religion in an hour and 20 minutes, brother.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say, because I had to tune out and tune back in. But did you cover the caravan routes that have been discovered? Google archaeologists, using Google Maps, have discovered the actual caravan route, the actual Silk Road trade route in Arabia. Seriously, they did. They mapped this out. These are amateur archaeologists of just using Google Maps, And what they found was, it's called the Shawa Hamawawat.
Yabba Dabba Doo route, yeah.
Yeah. Which is like way hundreds of miles,
Goes right through the North Pole.
Yeah, well, hundreds of miles above where Mecca is. I mean, they bypassed the whole area, and they have this, and they've actually documented this because archaeologists have gone there, and they've known about these grave sites, but it's actually called kind of a highway of death, where because for centuries, like we're talking 3000 BC, this was going on, this trade route. Where people, because you would die on the side of the road, what are you going to do with the body? You got to bury it somewhere. You know what I mean? So there are shrines set up. But either way, it's hundreds of miles north of Mecca. You know what I mean? So, did you cover that? I mean,
I covered Montgomery Watt's trade route theory, where they would offload ships in Aden send it up to Sana, up to Taif, and then 3,000 feet down to Mecca off the plateau, and then you got to come back up 3,000 feet to Yathrib, and then up to Gaza.
Well, this isn't 3,000 feet. This is hundreds of miles.
No. I'm talking about the plateau coming. It's like coming down the side of a mountain 3,000 feet from up above.
Right.
This is what they would have to do. It makes absolutely no sense to do that, to put Mecca on a trade route, this trade route that you're speaking of. It makes absolutely no sense because, number one, you're coming off the side of a plateau, 3,000 feet, and then you got to go 3,000 feet back up. And where are you going? What are you doing down there? There's no vegetation. There's nothing of value down there. There's no water to water your camels. I mean, why are you going down there? So it makes no sense. So that was debunked by Patricia Corona.
They were all doing the Hajj.
Well, now it's been proven. No, seriously.
Okay, that's a great. Okay, hold on. That's the point. That's the point.
They found it.
Let me address that. If they were doing the Hajj, people are making the Hajj. If they're doing that, somebody would have been scratching something on rocks as they're traveling along, celebrating the fact that they're going to.
You think so?
The greatest city, but there's nothing there.
Yeah,
there's nothing supporting that idea.
The point I'm bringing up is they found the graveyards. It's a huge find because it's in northern Arabia. So they're actually now there's archaeological digs going on right now, or requests for archaeological digs right now to dig this stuff up. Okay, 100, no, actually it's more than 100 miles. It's like 200-300 miles north of Mecca. Mm-hmm. They actually have it plotted out, the whole thing. Where they have, because I mean, seriously, this is.
Well, I'm not discounting that, Rad. I'm saying that that's part of the trade, the old ancient trade route.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying is the traditional idea that Mecca was part of that trade route is debunked.
No,
we agree that that trade route existed.
Absolutely.
We disagree with the existence of Mecca being part of that trade route. Mecca wasn't on any maps. Mecca doesn't appear on a map until 900 AD. 250 years after the death of Muhammad.
Oh, you silly kafir! You don't you understand? There Ptolemy. Didn't he mention that there were?
I talked about that with Bob, the builder. Makaraba is mentioned one time by one person on all of that history, and it's east of Medina, not west. The etymology of that name has nothing to do with it.
Kafir, how can
Radical,
you
you come on at the right time.
Like
the
worst Muslim.
We're an hour and a half in. We're going to play video. All right?
All right, brother. Well, no, I'm just saying.
You can stay in here. You just got to listen and mute.
All right.
So, here you go, Eric. I know that for the last hour, you've been giving a presentation, giving us some entertainment. So for the next 2 minutes, you're going to see and for everybody in the chat, if y'all are on TikTok and you're not following the Christian that just demolishes this leprechaun, you need to start following him. His name is the Bible Guy. So get on TikTok, get on the Bible Guy's channel, and you start looking at his TikTok, start liking them, go through them all, start liking them. Give him a follow and everything. He's doing wonderful work. I was talking with him over on the God Logic channel. It's a wonderful young lad and very, very smart. He twists hymns up really bad here. So let's take a look at it. Just turn it up a little bit.
So my question for you is, if the messenger prepares the way for Yahweh, Jesus quotes Malachi 3:1 and says that John the Baptist is the messenger, and John the Baptist says he prepared the way for Jesus. Who is Jesus?
Where does it say that John the Baptist prepared the way for Jesus?
John chapter 1, verse 15.
Okay. So she says that. Okay. So
what's the matter? Can't you talk? Has the cat got your tongue?
I don't understand what Malachi is saying and who that's about. So I'll give you an example. If I read Isaiah 9:6, yeah, I'm not going to change the subject, but Isaiah 9:6. I'm not going to change the subject, but Isaiah 9:6.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Christians will tell me this is Jesus, yeah?
Yeah, it's Jesus for sure.
Oh, Jews say it's Hezekiah.
Hezekiah died and he is no longer reigning. Verse 7 says, the increase of his government, there will be no end. Hezekiah his government ended.
Do you believe Jesus was the everlasting Father?
Yes.
So you believe Jesus the Son or the Father?
Everlasting Father has to do with authority, not the person of the Father.
Who refers to Jesus as the everlasting Father?
I do. Anybody who accepts the authority and governance of Christ,
Okay, listen. We'll do an internal critique.
they are by definition calling him the everlasting Father. I can prove that Jesus is the servant in Isaiah 53 as well.
We only debate Isaiah 53. Tell me who were the seed of Jesus?
Those who believe in him.
Tell me where in the Bible, anywhere, that word has been used as a metaphor rather than a literal children.
Galatians 3.
Forget Galatians. Forget Galatians.
You asked the question. I'm going to respond to it.
In the Old Testament, tell me where in the Bible, anywhere.
Girl, you have done it again.
Can you show me anywhere that word is used for anything other than a literal descendant?
In Abraham, when God promised Abraham a descendant, a seed, it's not talking about a child, a human.
Where is that word?
It's not talking about the child that would be born from his wife. It's talking about the Messiah. A seed.
Forget this. Go back to the point.
That's what I thought, nerd.
I enjoy that too much because I don't want to say I so dislike Hamza. I just so dislike his dishonesty when doing dawah.
Wait, the one thing that I want to point out there is you notice the discussion. It started off with John the Baptist preparing the way for Jesus. Well, where did John say that? In the Gospel of John.
John 1:15.
In the first chapter. Okay, so he said it. So Isaiah 9:6. Right there, the D.combat kicked in, right? Oh, darn it. He got an answer for that. I don't know how to respond. Let's go to the next objection. Let's go to the next objection. So he keeps going to next objections. And then Bible guy was like, I could even show you this, referring to Isaiah 9:6. And then he says, I could show you this in Isaiah 53 if you wanted me to. Boom. Because he knew he was defeated with Hezekiah and everything else in Isaiah 9, he's like, all right, let's take on Isaiah 5:3. Let's go on with the seed. Show me where it's metaphorical. He shows him. And now he's like, where in the Bible does it say it? Well, he shows him in the Bible. No, I said the Old Testament. No, you're that stupid. You didn't even know you just said the Bible. So I figured that would be a nice little laugh. You have to give it us a little entertainment.
He actually sums up everything you said when he goes to go I think it was Galatians, and the dude literally says, "Forget about Galatians." In other words, forget about everything that I've just asked you to prove. I don't care about that. You know, I was in an argument with someone regarding where. Never mind. I won't talk about that. But basically, it was show me where God says this. And you show them where God says this and say, I don't care about this. I want to know about this. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's totally irrational and illogical.
That's what Hamza does. He's made arguments for, what do you say? It's only in the Quran where the Muhammad or Allah, Gabriel, whatever, calls Pharaoh king. It's how could have you known this? He read hieroglyphics, or did he know that? Well, it says in Genesis chapter 40 verse 1, Pharaoh is referred to as a king. So if he just lifted it from the Bible, it would have been not a problem. But that guy is he's just a clown. And I appreciate you showing that, Chris, because that just illustrates the desperation of dawah that these guys have. I'd really like to get somebody on here to talk about Mecca. I want to hear some of their responses. I want to see some of the evidences these guys have.
I would
for
too.
The city. I would love to see. I want to see something.
Or even somebody do a response video to you or something. I would even accept a response video. Right.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that.
So what I want to do though is we have been about an hour and 40 minutes tonight so far. I'm going to, a lot of people may not know the radical rants. I'm going to get a radical rant out of the radical moderate tonight, but not quite yet because we need to hold that off. We need to get Mr. Eric. What's the last thoughts that you want everybody to remember from this presentation?
Great. And I appreciate that. Number one, when we start engaging Muslims theologically, they are going to come up with every excuse and every attack that they possibly can with the Bible. You just saw a great example of what that leprechaun, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, Hamza came up with, and what he'll do in order to twist the Bible. And we can go ahead and attack the Quran all day long. But when you use geography, when you use the historical method, known ways to demonstrate historical facts, you can disprove this entire faith system just like that. And here's the best thing. You're not going to be called some type of phobe or hater or bigot or whatever for saying, oh, you're talking about you're attacking the prophet. You're talking about Aisha's age, or you're talking about the development of the Quran. You just don't understand the Arabic. You don't have to worry about any of that. If you just do history the way history is supposed to be done, Mecca doesn't exist. And if Mecca doesn't exist, Muhammad was born in some place that did not exist. So therefore, not only is the city a myth, but also Muhammad becomes a myth. And if Muhammad is a myth, then the entire faith system itself in Islam is mythological and akin to Zoroastrianism or something along those lines. It's easy pie.
Thank you so much, Brother Eric. This is a live stream that we were supposed to do last night, but my work has been not very nice with me the last little while. But thank you so much for being able to put the live stream over to today, and providing us with so much of this information. It was very informative. Very informative. If anybody that is out there that has Muslims in their friends list, go ahead and take this live stream and send it to them and just ask them for a reply. They don't have to debate you or anything. Just ask them for a reply. Where is the evidence? That's all we want to hear. Now, I said it once before, and I'm going to say it again. Y'all ain't ready for what's about to happen. Y'all ain't ready for what we call the radical rant. But y'all about to get it. Y'all ready? You there, Mr. Radical?
Oh, I'm here, dude. I'm ready to rant.
Okay, Rad's also known as the John Madden of Christian apologetics. Oh, by the way, that's D.L. Tate's description.
Yeah. Whatever. Let me John Madden this right now. Okay, so first of all, let me just say, Chris, thank you for keeping that smoke north of the border so far. I appreciate that. I know you had everything to do with this. I'm just saying, because keep your gay smoke on your side of the border. I'm really pissed at that. Polluting America with your smoke. I'm just saying. But anyway, no, as far as this topic is concerned, I am sorry. As Eric has pointed out, there is no logical reason that there was a Mecca. Seriously, think about this for a second, people. You got Mecca that is Death Valley on steroids. This is supposed to be, okay, the place where Abraham, Isaac, all the patriarchs had their temple, if you will. Okay, yeah, let's go in the temple. Look at the no, God says I live in a tent, right? Basically, this is no problem. Okay, for the tabernacle of God, I got no problem with this. Okay, God says I am my Shekinah is here. My glory is with you. But the Jews are like, no, we want a temple. Oh, well, we want a king, and then we want a temple. We want all these things. And God is like, yeah, you really don't want that, but okay, I'm going to give it to you, right? Okay, but you look at the descriptions of the temple and how was it built. It was built with the finest cedar wood. It was built with the finest masons. It was built with the finest gold. It was built with everything that was the finest and the purest. Okay, to build this thing that was the temple of God, where the sacrifices would be made day in and day out. From the moment the sun rose up to the moment the sun went down, blood was shed. and everything had to be cleansed with blood. What do Muslims have? They got unhewn stone without even a roof until probably what 20, 30 years before Muhammad, and they only had a roof because there was a shipwreck, according to the Islamic sources, only because they found a shipwreck. Okay, and they got the wood because they didn't have no wood. Oh, but wait, Mecca was supposed to have palm trees. It was supposed to be a paradise, but they didn't have no wood. They were burning camel dung in this area. You know what I mean? Come on. Anyway, point being is this. This is a cube. It's not even a cube. It's not even a perfect cube. It's not even. Ugh. Anyway, but look at the temple. The temple is the finest, the greatest, the most purest stuff. But the Muslims have, yeah, we got a pile of rocks. And we ain't got a roof, but, you know, that's what we got. That's been here forever. Right. As the law of entropy says, it's not been here forever. Because not even the law of entropy, a second law of entropy, I should say, because everything decays. But no, there's no maintenance to this stuff. It's been flooded out, washed out, destroyed. And well, even the Islamic tradition says that they had to rebuild it multiple times. And Muhammad had the black stone. Oh, the sacred meteorite or whatever it was, we don't know, that now is broken apart and, well, kind of looks sort of, well, like a woman's private part. But hey, okay, go ahead and kiss it. It's going to take away your sins. And that's another point. We got the Rock of Ages in Jesus Christ. The Rock of Ages takes away our sins. What do they got? They got some black fractured stone that looks like a
The
woman's
rock of
female
menstrual
part.
blood.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's another thing. Wait, thank you. So evidently, according to Islamic tradition, this thing was white. Right, sure it was. But evidently, menstruating women used to wipe their menstrual cloths on it and it turned it black. Right. Yeah. So I'm kissing that. No, I'm not. Thank you very much. But anyway, okay, this whole thing is sham of shams. Not only that, but think about this. This thing is in a floodplain. It floods. Now, don't get me wrong, Saudi, it doesn't flood often. Well, like maybe once every 20, 30 years. But either way, it floods. They get an inch of water and forget it's a tsunami. These people, seriously, this is no modern sanitation. They're digging like, well, latrines, right, Eric? You know what I'm talking about. They just dig a pit and they poop in it.
Straddle trenches.
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. Well,
Field sanitation.
now it floods. Oh, this is a total death trap. Okay? Seriously. And there's pictures, videos of dudes swimming in 1960s or whatever. Where it's flooded, they're swimming. Oh yeah, it's great. It's a good thing. Yeah, death is coming soon. No, this religion, I am sorry. There is no science to it. There is no mysticism to it. There is no nothing to it. What there is a bunch of conquerors or whatever. What happened was, okay, and it is clear from the archaeological evidence as well as the historical evidence. What happened was is the Arab tribes outgrew their resources. They had literally outpopulated their resources, and a weakened Rome and Persia. Okay, all of a sudden they were like, okay, we can conquer a town, we can conquer another town, we can keep going because the Romans and the Persians were like bled white over their war of over 100 years beforehand. Okay, so they're like, okay, fine, we're going to keep withdrawing. Okay, there is actually well evident document where during the siege of Caesarea, I mispronounced it. It's in Jerusalem. Go look it up. Okay, where where the Muslims had this thing under siege for 2 years in the Holy Land.
Come on, wrap it up, brother.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up with this. And the Roman general came out and met the Commander Khalid, I believe was the name, and said, "Hey, listen, this is how we dealt with you before. We just give you gold and tribute, and you go along your way." And Khalid said, "No, we are not going back to eating thorns and thistles and lizards. Fine, you can go to that. We're not doing that." In other words, it's on now. We've got our moment. We're going to take the moment. And that's pretty much what happened. You had a weakened empire, weakened multiple empires, and you had a bunch of people that had nothing to lose. Okay? They weren't going back to the desert. They were finally seized their moment, and they were going back. And then you have the letter of John of Cedric, where it talks about the first
Go on now.
interaction. Well, it talks about
I
the
gotta
first
go to bed, brother.
All right,
Come
well,
on
hold
now.
on.
I've tried to
I'm
get
gonna
off for the
finish.
last 10
I
minutes.
swear, I'm going to finish up with this. John of Cedric is the first letter between the Muslim conquerors and the Christian. The Muslim questions him with, and of course, there's always a Jew standing by. Okay, questions him and say, "Well, we Muslims, we believe in this." Doesn't mention a prophet, but believes in this. And John of Cedric gives the actual Christian answer, right? And he asks the Jew. Actually, he gives the question. He actually responds to him using Genesis 19, I believe. Well, could be another one, but where anyway, he gives a Trinitarian response, right? Okay, where Abraham, okay, call. Oh, so I'm sorry, I'm losing it. But bottom line is this: there is no mention of Muhammad in the first interaction between Christians and Muslims. There is no mention of Muhammad anywhere up until 200 years after Muhammad. There is no mention of Mecca, as Eric will obviously testify, 200 to 300 years later.
741
This is
AD.
Yeah, exactly. This is all a farce. No, seriously, wait, one
All
last
right,
point.
thanks, brother. That was
Wait,
awesome.
no,
That was
wait,
awesome,
wait,
brother. Thank you so
wait,
much.
no.
That was
One
awesome.
last point.
Pause
One
it.
last point.
Nope, I'm dropping you down. You ain't talking no more. Woo! I thought that the radical rant was going to be just a quick 3-minute solid. Bam, there it is, and I'm done. But thank you so much, brother Eric, for coming up
Right.
and sharing that information with us. I just want to thank Patricia Alberson as well. God bless you, dear sister. Thank you so much for the support with the super sticker. I did want to mention that as well. I probably will see you later, Patricia, on Clubhouse. If you're on Clubhouse, if not, we'll talk tomorrow. So with saying that, I want to thank everybody for showing up. It is time for me to head out and go into bed. God bless you all and have a wonderful night.
All right.